Okay, perfect. Right, so we will start as we normally do. So, Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vitveshavahai. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So welcome everyone. And so we've still got a few people at the second talk, so that's good news. And so I will start by recapping a little bit about what we did last time, and then introduce today's topic. So this is the kind of thing that we go really slow, and then I will be repeating myself a lot, and it is not because I've forgotten, but it is because it takes time for us to digest all this. So some of the things we will be going through a few times more than maybe we would otherwise. So last time, what we looked at is we looked at yoga as a way to bring happiness to our lives. And right here, right now. So it is how we can have a happy life. And also another term that we could use instead of happy is also free, a free life. So, so instead of happiness, we can use the word freedom. So it is freedom from suffering, freedom from being sad, freedom of anything that's not good. And so the other thing that we talked about was that happiness lies, happiness in external objects is time bound. So basically, when we are trying to look for happiness in external things, it's great. It's lovely for at some point in time. It's quite thrilling. But then that is not really where happiness, true happiness and everlasting happiness lies. So so I think it is quite important to really understand this point. And there is always a story, and as we go on, you will find that there are loads of stories and or metaphors that are used in this kind of teaching to get across some ideas and some concepts that might be a little bit more complicated. So there is this nice little story that is quite that I think you might like. So there is this old woman in a village who had lost a needle, and she was looking. So she was knitting, and so she'd lost a needle, and it was dark, and well, it was kind of getting to nighttime. There was still a little bit of light outside, and so she was looking out for something, and then there was this really lovely young man who found her and said, well, what are you doing? And then she said, oh, well, I've actually lost my needle, so I'm looking for it. And so there were all, so many other villagers had all joined the party, and they were all looking for this needle. And then the man kind of said, before joining the party, he was slightly sensible, not just good looking, but sensible too. Then he said, so what are you looking for? And then she said, oh, my needle. And then he said, but where did you lose it? And then she said, well, I've lost it in my hut. But and then he was like, but why are you looking outside? And then he said, well, she said, oh, well, because there's no light inside, I can't see. So therefore, I just thought if I look outside, maybe I'll find it. Okay, so it is, you know, however absurd it might seem, but this is exactly what we do. We know exactly where the happiness is, but then we go and look for it somewhere else. So we're not that clever after all. So this is just to bring this point. So basically, the way I talked about it last time is this disconnect between where we're looking for happiness and where it isn't. So the happiness, the everlasting happiness that we're looking for, is something that is within us, and that's the only place where we can find it. We can find something. I mean, I'm sure if they keep looking for the needle, they might discover something else there, which is fine, which is what happens to us, but then they're not going to find that needle. Okay, so so we also talked last time about, so I'd ask you to think about noticing what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and also to reflect a little bit more broadly on the causes of sadness, and to try and trace this back to the 5 sources that we discussed. So I'll go back to this 5 sources or causes of suffering, as we call it, or insecurities, or lack of happiness. You can call it anything, it doesn't really matter. We're not going to get too bogged down in those definitions. So the first one is about misconception about the truth and the reality. So we haven't talked about this, and we will not talk about this for another few weeks. And then we talked about likes and dislikes. So we talked about all sorts of things that make us happy and or didn't, and last time. So these are the likes and the dislikes. And then there is the fear of death. I mean, this is something that's ingrained in us, that we fear death. And so there was another problem that I sort of, we didn't look at, but I listed, was a problem of non-self recognition. Okay, so this is quite a bit of a mouthful. And so all it means is that we are not recognizing who we truly are. So we don't really know who we are, and we have some misconception about who we might be. So and this is the one that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And for those who knows this, I mean, I will mention some Sanskrit words for those who are familiar with them, but for those who are not familiar, and if it's the first time you're hearing them, you don't need to know these words. If you do need to know, then I will specify it. Otherwise, I'll just mention it just for interest for people who actually know them. So these are also known as the 5 kleshas. And in Sanskrit, they're called avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. And yeah, so these are the ones. So for those who have got a bit of background, you might be able to recognize this. And so today we're going to carry on with this pursuit about trying to see how we can alleviate suffering. So, and also we will have an introduction to the problem of non-self recognition, and we will talk about the yogic concept of the 3 bodies. So we're not just talking about one body now that we've got, but we're talking about 3 different bodies. Who knew? And also we're going to talk a little bit about practical ways of coping with suffering based on this concept of the 3 bodies that we will talk about. So again, as I've said before, so you know, do not accept anything that I'm telling you. Just think about it and reflect on it. So the question today is, am I this body? So so who think that they are this body and just this body? Oh, so just a show of hands, people who think they are this body. Yeah. Okay. Who's not sure? I don't know whether. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right. And who's convinced they are not this body? Okay. Okay, fine. Wonderful, thank you. I actually was asking my husband about this at dinner time today, and I said, "Oh, do you think you're this body?" And he looked at his belly and he said, "Oh, I'm definitely not this." So, so that was his logic for saying, "No, that's not him." But so, I mean, I'm just going to start from a very pragmatic point of view. I mean, we were all children at some point. We were just this tiny little thing, and then we kept growing into adolescent and times when we were in our at the height of youth. Some of us are still there, some of us are not, and then there is a different kind of phase of life, middle life, and I've just used these terms loosely here as menopause and andropause, and then old age. So basically, everything has changed. I mean, you know, this body has gone through all this process. So so something has changed all throughout. And then, so whether we can actually say we're still this body, then it is slightly debatable. I mean, to be able to measure something, there should be something that's fixed. And here, this body is not fixed because we know that it has changed for sure. Okay, so everybody is convinced about this. Okay, they've changed, no doubt about this. Okay, and also, I mean, if we go from an anatomical point of view, I'm no expert on this, but apparently we get new cells every 7 to 10 years. And some cells regenerate really quickly. So all the cells that you were born with are not here anymore, I'm afraid. So really, physically, what makes you from then and now is completely different. Okay, so yeah, this is just something to think about. So purely from a physiological point of view, we are not the body, and it's constantly changing. So the yogic concept. So we're not going to be talking about the medical concept, but we're going to be talking about the way the yogis, the philosophy talks about our bodies. So there is this classification, which is called the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. So I will talk a lot more about these. So that's the three things that we're going to be concentrating on for today. So we move on to the physical body. So the physical body, the first thing about it is we can touch it, right? So we can feel it, we can see it. I can see you, we can see your physical body, no problem, as it is now. So we can touch it, we can see it, we can feel it, etc. And so what else do we know about the physical body is what is it made of? So it is made of the 5 elements. Okay, so this is the yogic explanation, right? So some of you who might think that science has got an alternative view, but essentially we're going with the yogi view today. So there are 5 elements. So earth, that's the solidity of the bones. Our bones is kind of said to be of earth element. And then there is water. So we are made a lot of water. And then there's the fire element within us, so the digestion, etc. And then air and space. Well, there's air in us, and also there is ether and space. So basically, that's what the 5 elements that actually make up the body, the physical body. And so what sustains this body is food. So we nourish the body, and that's what determines what the body is like to a certain extent. So that's what happens to the body. So it takes this physical food, this food that you can touch, this food that you can taste, this food that you can feel, etc. So that's another characteristic, if you like, of the physical body. And then what it does, the body, is one of its functions, if you like, it experiences pleasure and pain. Okay, so with the body, you taste an ice cream, you love it, so that's your tongue tasting it. And so we have to have our body to experience things, pleasures and pain. So we need our body to do that, all our physical senses, etc., to be able to experience pain and pleasure in life. Okay, and then in terms of the nature of the physical body, it is subject to 6 types of modifications. So you don't have to remember each one of these or anything like that, but it's just to get an understanding. So first of all, before we were born, we were a fetus. So there was or even before that, there was a possibility of existence there, that we were there. And then we were born. And then now we exist. And then we grow. So go through all the phases of life. We age. And then there is decay. So the body decays. And then there is death. So so I'll just warn you a little bit. I mean, in philosophy, we kind of talk about death quite casually, right? So it's nothing sinister, or it's something that we kind of has a different kind of meaning, which we will come back to a little bit later today. So these are the modifications that the physical body go through. So we all agree with this. There is no doubt about it. I mean, one thing is we all know is that we're going to die. Okay, our body is going to decay. We know that we're going to age, whether we like it or not. And you know, all these things are fairly uncontroversial, shall we say. And we experience our body in the waking state. So when we are awake, so like where we are now, so we experience our body. And the 3 states that we talk about in philosophy is there is the waking state, like hopefully we all in the waking state, I think so. And then the other state is the dream state, so where we're asleep and then we're dreaming. And then the 3rd state is the deep sleep state, so where we are in deep sleep. So we actually experience what's going on in our body. We experience the physical body only when we are in the waking state. So in our dream, we can think of anything. I mean, in our dream, we can be this fantastic athlete. We can fly. We can do absolutely anything, right? So we are not limited by actually what our physical body can do, right? So this is what we mean by this. So our physical body, we only experience it in the waking state. And this is something, again, that I will just mention it now for completeness, but it's something that we will come back to in future months. But how does this body come about? So how come we're not all the same? So how come we're not all built the same? How come you will probably say, if I ask you this question, you'll probably say, oh, because our parents are the same. But then I'll say, why are your parents different? And then, you know, we'll go on like that. And then eventually we'll be like, well, okay, there must be a reason why we are all so physically different. And this physical body that we have is gained by deeds from previous lives. So I know this is not necessarily something that everybody thinks about or is in agreement with, but for now, just think about it, and this is what the theory says. So feel free to kind of have a different view of it. And as I say, it's something that we will explore in a lot more detail later on in future months. And then, so this is about the physical body. So then we talk about the subtle body. So the subtle body is something that we cannot see and we cannot touch. Okay, so we cannot perceive it with our senses. So it's not something that you can weigh. You can't do an experiment and say, oh, I'll try and see how much my subtle body weighs, or I'll try and observe my subtle body in the lab, or anything like that. That doesn't kind of work in that same way. And so, and as I said earlier on, the physical body is the house, if you like, of pain and pleasure. It's where it is actually happening. But the subtle body are the instruments for enjoying pain and pleasure. So it's slightly more subtle than the actual physical bit of it. Okay, so, and what I mean by instruments here is, oops. Sorry, I'm just admitting someone who lost connection. Okay, so the instruments are the sense organs. So the sense organs, they are in the physical body. We talked about the ears, the eyes, and the tongue, etc. But then behind the eyes, if you like, there is the ability to see. Right, the eyesight. So, and this is what we mean by the slightly more subtle element associated with these organs, but which then allow us to see. Right. So, for instance, you can see somebody who is blind. You can see their eyes. You can see their physical eyes, but there is something missing there that means that they can't see. Okay, and that's the eyesight. So basically the faculty, if you like, that's associated with each of these sense organs is the subtle bit that we cannot see. You can see my hands, but you can't see the ability that I have to actually grasp something. So this is the faculty of action. Okay, so the faculty of action is voice, and there is with the hands the ability to grasp. And then with the feet, the ability to walk. So, you know, like you can have a physical body, but you're not able to move. You're immobile. And that is because you haven't got this subtle ability to be able to move. So that's how it is explained. And also there is the physical genitals. And then the capacity associated with it is the capacity of procreation. So the sense organs and the sense of actions are these ones that I've just mentioned. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to go into each of these details. But then all I'm saying is there are things behind the physical body that enliven the body. Okay, so without these faculties, these things, then the body is not going to be able to function properly. Okay, and then there are 5 pranas in the body. So you might have heard me in yoga class talking about prana. And so prana is the life force. So it's all this working that's happening behind the scene to keep the body functioning. So this is, and again, we can't necessarily see it as such. I mean, some of it we can probably, so you can argue that you can see the heartbeat, or you can, but so it's all these things that are happening behind the scene. So pranas, again, so there are different kind of pranas, and also I will do one session at some point, an additional session on all the pranas, to go into a lot of details, because it's really interesting, and it's also can link quite nicely to our Hatha Yoga practice. But for today, I'm not going to go into the details of the pranas, but all I'm going to say is that the pranas, what helps us for the breath, into the body. We know that we can't survive without breath. And then it also eliminates waste from the body. So that's all the evacuation. So there are pranas that's working to make sure that we eliminate waste. So otherwise the body doesn't function, as we know. And then there is circulation. So once we've got the oxygen into the body, how it's circulated around the body, how it goes to the various organs, what happens. So there is this whole circulation in the body that actually requires the prana associated with it to circulate within the body. And then, well, the body is truly an amazing piece of kit, really. I mean, when you think about it. So the next bit is around throwing out something. So if you kind of, let me think of an example. If you're eating something that's really not good for you, your body will have a natural tendency to get you to spit it out. Okay, so when we taste something we really don't like it, we spit it out. So there is that's ability of the body to expel something. And also, if you kind of have a little bit of a splinter in your finger, and then the splinter will kind of want to pop out, it will work with you to come up to try and pop out. And sometimes, well, if you're thinking about, there are some examples where it doesn't work so well, or, you know, if we've had a transplant, for instance, and then the body is kind of rejecting a foreign organ because it's not recognizing it as its own, and that's the prana associated with the ability of the body to kind of throw this out of the body. And then there is the prana that's that's associated with digestion and assimilation of nutrients within the body. And so these are the 5 pranas. I'm not going to go into much more detail. And then the 2 others is the mind and the intellect. So here there is always a difference or a distinction between what the mind is and what the intellect is. So the mind, what the mind does is, as we all know, we live with it every day. The mind is always thinking. The mind is always doubting. The mind is always not trusting. The mind is always kind of moving from one thought to another. The mind also has our instincts, all kind of instincts, and also our emotions. Okay, so this is all to do with our mind. And our intellect is slightly different. It is this idea of decision making. So it's where we kind of use the information that we know to reach a decision or to make an opinion. So for instance, if you can, well, you smell something first coming from the kitchen, you can smell something and you think, oh, well, actually, I don't really know what it is. But then at this time of night, I think it might be a hot chocolate because that's what we have at this time. So you know, you kind of then bring your intellect, your faculty to discriminate, and based on the information that you've been fed and that you know, to actually reach a decision or a conclusion, if you like. So this is what the distinction between the mind and the intellect. Okay. So what we're talking here is still the subtle body. So the subtle body, we experience it in the waking state and in the dream states as well. So the subtle body is very much there in the dream states. And again, the subtle body, where we get it from is from deeds from the past, from previous lives again. So we will park that. Now the final body, so the third body that you've got, is the causal body. So the causal body is the cause for the 2 other bodies. So it is the cause for the physical body and the cause for the subtle body. So it is, we can't describe it. It's beyond any description. And it is actually something in a potential form. So the best way to think about it, it just exists there. And if you think about a seed and a mango tree, so if you have the seed for a mango tree, so that comes on, inside a mango, there is this hard shell, and then if you cut it, then you'll find the seed inside. So that seed, when you look at it, it has the potential of growing a mango tree. It isn't a mango tree yet because it hasn't been planted, etc. But it has the potential of giving us a mango tree. It won't be a coriander tree. It won't be any other tree. It will be a mango tree. That's the potentiality of it. Okay, so so that is one way of looking or thinking about the causal body. And also the causal body, we actually really know about it it is experienced in deep sleep. So what happens in deep sleep? So so everyone is familiar with deep sleep? Yeah? Okay, so deep sleep, we all love it, right? Because when we wake up from deep sleep, we're all revived and we've not had to think about anything. But then you know that you were in deep sleep. Okay, so who's that you there in that deep sleep? So it is. So here, the state of deep sleep is this state of ignorance because of the mind and the intellect are not there. So it is a state where there is just pure existence. You just know there is nothing happening. It's just there. That's it. So that is, if you like, one way of thinking about the causal body. So a quote here to explain the causal body here says that's the one that is unexplainable, without beginning, and in the form of truth. So it is the actual truth of it being there, which is the cause for the two other bodies. So which is ignorant of its own, which is free from any division, and transformation is the causal body. So basically it is not aware of it. It is not aware of anything. It hasn't got any attributes of the mind, any attributes of the intellect, any attributes of the physical body. It is just there, and that is the causal body. Okay, so now moving on to the three bodies. I mean, we will talk through these a lot more in future sessions as well. So don't worry if you haven't got it all 100% just yet. So what happens to the three bodies at the time of death? So basically, it is nothing sinister at all. And the subtle and the causal body stay together and leave the physical body at the time of death. So the subtle body and the causal body, they stay together, if you like. So if you want, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of an analogy. It's this little chip that stays there about your DNA, that's got all your imprints and everything about you that's there, and this is what leaves the body. And then the physical body, what happens to it? The physical body returns to its source. So we've said that the physical body is made up of all the elements, and then at the end it goes back to the elements, and that is in fact what it is. So this is a little bit, in a nutshell, an explanation of the three bodies. So now, so assuming that this kind of all makes sense, we're there, these three bodies, and that's what makes us up. And so what? You know, we always kind of think, yeah, okay, this might be okay, but what's the big deal? Okay, so now we're going to just try and look at this. So hopefully this kind of makes it a little bit clear about the subject, about who we are, and the fact that maybe we are not this body. So it doesn't mean that we don't have to look after the body. I mean, the physical body is very, very important. It is something that we've got, that we've come up here with. We don't, I mean, in this life, we don't exist without it. So it is very important. So which means we need to look after it. We need to accept it because it's been given to us, and we need to respect it for enabling us to do our day-to-day lives and what we're here for, what we have been put here to do on earth, if you like. So we need to nourish it. It's our responsibility to keep it nourished. And I'm not talking just about food, but I'm talking about how you keep your mind, about how we nourish the intellect, how we nourish the subtle body as well, not just the physical body. And again, the interesting things and the appeal of yoga is that it has a whole set of practices to help nourish the subtle body as well. So there are things about circulation, things about digestion, think about how to nourish the mind, how to etc. So this is what I think is quite interesting to understand, where all these practices come in and at what level they are operating. And I think what it does is it also helps us to correctly identify the problems that we have. Okay, so it might seem a little bit weird, but to speak in that kind of language, but then, you know, you've got a problem with your foot. You've hurt your foot. So, and then I'll say, oh, how are you today? And you're like, oh, I'm not really well. But it's not you, right? It's your foot. It's your body. It's the physical body that's not right. You're fine. You are always fine, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. But the problem is the problem is not yours. The problem is that of the physical body. But obviously because you identify so much with the body, then we kind of think, yeah, okay, it's us. Okay, so sometimes it is quite helpful to be able to take that little bit of a step back to appreciate where we are and the source of our problems. And this is even more important when we kind of think about mental health issues. So if we're talking about depression, about sadness, so it is kind of saying, well, sadness is something that happens in life, but then it becomes depression if it's sustained, and if you think this problem is you and it's not just a temporary problem of the mind. Okay, so it is kind of feeding that. If you know, when sadness starts, it is kind of feeding that sadness and feeding it, thinking, associating ourselves with that, then that starts taking over. Whereas what this is kind of saying or encouraging people to do is to kind of say, well, actually sadness is part of life. It's something that happens, but then that too will pass, that too will go, and it is not you. It is a temporary problem of the mind that will get resolved, basically. So that, I mean, it might seem a bit simplistic what I'm saying, but at least just kind of try and think. We are really looking at the causes of these problems. And also, I think an understanding at least of the three bodies help us understand the causes of diseases a little bit, not just the symptoms. And these days we have a lot of autoimmune problems. Okay, so we go to the doctors, we have all the tests, everything come back negative, everything is perfectly fine. And yet we know for a fact that we're not functioning properly, and there is something that is really the problem. And where that problem is, the problem is in the subtle body. And science has got very little understanding of that subtle body. So what it is that is happening in that subtle body. So sometimes it is really important to kind of go not just with the symptoms of the problems, but actually trying to go to the root of the problems. And there are other, there is Eastern medicine that kind of looks at these a lot more. But it's just to kind of say that you know, if you've got a diagnosis of you've got an autoimmune problem, so then maybe taking pills is not going to, it might help you initially, but really looking at the deeper cause of these problems, the prana disturbances, and what's happening in the body might be more helpful to you in the long term. And also, this is something really fantastic and pretty much unique in this tradition, is in this tradition, it is believed that each part of the body, so when we talked about all these sense organs and all these sense organs of actions, so each one of them is presided, if you like, or is presided by a particular deity. So this is what is believed. And the beauty of this, so whether you believe in it or not, but one of the beauty of this really is that it starts kind of really helping us to kind of say, well, our body is sacred, there is something divine about us, there is something, you know, really special about who we are and how what life is. So this is something really, really special and unique. So, and again, what it helps is it helps you to start accepting that divinity within yourself, and it, you know, and also it starts to kind of help us to say, well, actually, we need to keep to take care of these organs. They're all divine. They're all being given to us, and we accept them, and you know, all that kind of thing. And over time, it kind of really brings a very, very different way of thinking about things, which can be very productive and very helpful and very joyful as well. And so the next bit, so I think I've talked a little bit about this one as well, about the emotional problems, so I will not talk about that again. And also the other point that I wanted to make was about knowing the existence of these three bodies is the importance of prana and life force, and about how the various practices of yoga help us to do that. So there is pranayama helping us with the flow of prana, and also there is things that help to keep us elevated, chanting mantras, and even doing good things, helping others, and all these are things that actually help our life force and help to keep us happy and sustained. So, and lastly, it kind of starts helping us to think about a healthy, I mean, I've used the word healthy here, but a healthy attitude towards sadness, grief, and death, and which are all part of life, and thinking about them in a slightly different way to what we're used to. So, so I think, so I will stop now. So what I wanted to say, what we've done today, is to kind of say, well, I'm not this body. So I'm not this physical body, I'm not this subtle body, and so there is a little bit more to us. And I am beyond this body, I'm unborn, and I'm pure consciousness. So I haven't talked about this, but if we're not this body, then we must be something else that's there all the time. Okay, so as I said, that as our body goes through all these stages of life, from being a child and all our cells are changing, there must be the one thing that's not changing all this time. Otherwise, we wouldn't be us. Okay, so that thing is unborn and it's pure consciousness. So I will talk more about this. And hopefully I've also given a few practical tips about how to think about problems, and also how to reprogram the mind and to kind of think, well, actually, I'm always okay. I will always be okay, but my body may be unwell. I may be sad at the moment, but it's all right. This is what happens occasionally, and I know what to do to do something about it. So I think this is what I wanted to say about today. So thank you very much. So I'll stop the recording now, and then I will unmute people and hopefully welcome some questions. So just give me a second, please.